Food truck for service today. Come out. Come out. Do it. Somebody told me. You haven't had any of those interrupted stream notifications come up? Oh, and a friend of mine that I went to college with posted a picture of their empty seats in their church building, and he goes, "I really miss people." And I immediately sent him a text. We're doing a drive-in church, and he goes, "That's a great idea."
Yes, why are they doing it?
Well, that's why all the
Why?
this one more like top about 100 times.
Is it right?
Oh yeah.
Even on just
on your license.
oh, that's right. You don't have a license. That's right. People are doing it anyway. Right now, come get us.
I think everybody feels that way. But one arrives Monday.
Oh, really?
One from LA. And one from China.
So you think we'll be able to use them next week? Excellent. Thank you. My plan is to continually loosen our restrictions to try to push the government to stop this.
Good morning. Yeah, 10:30. Theoretically. Right. Maybe a couple minutes late.
Well, I guess he talked first, so I'll wait for his mic to come.
Yeah. Oh, fingers. Even though my body feels fine. Fingers telling a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feeling away.
It sounded good.
Good.
It sounded really good up there. So. Way better. Acoustic way better. Whatever all that we did.
Yeah.
For people on Facebook that decided this one.
Oh yeah. We got 2 on YouTube.
Me and somebody else. Me and that other person.
Yeah, you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm one of those 2. The slap back between these 2 walls is really fun on his mic. There's a delay because his voice hits that wall, goes into his mic. So you get this flanging double hit effect.
Really? Yeah, I've heard it.
You can listen to it when you listen to the SD card.
Yeah,
But that's like his.
Yeah.
It's not the microphone. It's not feedback. It's literally those 2 walls.
Those 2 walls.
Yeah. Right.
Dude, what's up, John? Awesome, man.
Get the 60 feet, you know.
Yeah, I know, right? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just
Take it in. Go grab yourself some coffee.
I'm good. So the food trucks are real.
The fruit truck's for real, man.
I thought they were banned. They pointed out that they were banned.
Nah.
Yeah, and I'm not been out in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, what'd you get? Like a cold or something?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Just keeping,
Keeping your distance and stuff.
yeah, you know, us 50-year-olds.
I know, you gotta be careful.
Yeah, I'm over. I go 51 with Thursday actually.
Oh.
So I'm over. We got to read about Noah being like 979 or something.
Yeah. Chanel, how are you? I think I need to go get Barry.
Oh no, you lose him.
Well, it's time. He's over there. They're keeping about 5 feet.
They're good. A lot more people this week than last week.
Food truck Sunday, dude.
Yeah, a lot more. Easter, we might have to add services if we're still outside.
If we're still outside.
Next week, we set up chairs.
Well, like Roger had made a comment to me last night. He said, I think he was trying to be funny, but it came more across like mental.
Roger.
Ballard. He goes, we're on Fox News. Where other than Fox News and I said, the governor himself.
Yeah, he said the
Said
11th.
his new order says the 11th.
Yeah.
Now, he also said, I hope that Trump's right and we can be back by then.
Yeah.
But I didn't say, and he also said, if no one does what I say, I can make this last a lot longer.
Here's
Yeah, his stuff goes. But it's one of those, like, I don't, it's amazing people. And I told him, I said, this is probably the lowest viewed speech of the day this morning. Middle of the week, scheduled in the middle of the day. And everybody still has their jobs, Roger. And it was one of those.
No, it's
I got a big house, so we look at the
and Nate, if he wants to go ahead and fade that music.
Yeah. Go ahead and start talking. We'll get you down. Did you turn it on? Did you turn on your mic?
Good morning. I'm loud. If this is your first Sunday at Drive-In Church, honk your horn. Nice. If you were here last week, honk your horns. Want to welcome you this morning. What a beautiful day, huh? So can't beat this. I want to share a few things as we get going, as we prepare to worship together this morning and meet together. We've had several phrases that as a church and as a staff, we've been using through this. One of them is this. We've been using this phrase, faith and facts over fear. And so I want to start with just the faith part of things. God has made promises that he will meet our needs. And it's during times like this that we really know, do we really believe that or not? And so we know that God's got this. We know that God's with it. I said it last week, honk your horn if you know God is in control. Absolutely. And so faith trumps everything. My hat that I'm wearing today, honk your horn if you like my hat. I just like so when I was like, I could have been more than like 27, 28, and my parents, we were living in Michigan, and my parents bought a hat, this just like this one. I'll tell you what happened to the original. Just like this one. And I'm like 27 living in Michigan, and they give me a hat, cowboy hat. And I'm going, when will I ever wear that hat? I will never wear that hat. There's no reason I do it. And they said, well, you look good in that. I said, that makes no sense whatsoever. What are you doing? So they gave me the hat. And soon after, I did one of my first mission trips. And I realized when I was on mission trips, I was constantly outside. I was constantly speaking outside, standing out there. And I didn't want to just wear sun stuff all the time. And so I thought, this hat is perfect for that. So I wore this hat on the first mission trip. And it was Dominican Republic. And I got to the airport in the Dominican Republic, and I had to fill out some paperwork, and I set my hat down, I filled out the paperwork, and I turned around, the hat was gone. So when I got home, I immediately bought another hat just like it. Who knew that years and years and years after that, This hat would be for mission work in our communities and being worn because we have to be outside right now. God is faithful. I think he has a sense of humor at times, and he goes, yeah, I gave you that hat all those years ago to get you ready for what's going on right now. Faith trumps everything. We know that God is in control and that he's watching over us. So number one is faith. The second thing we're saying is faith and facts over fear. How many of you honk your horn if you know more about flu and viruses now than you ever needed to know? Yeah. I immediately, when this stuff happens, I'm a researcher by heart. And so I started researching all this stuff. And the stuff I found out that I realized no one was giving accurately is I'm looking at 35 to 55,000 people a year die from the flu in our country. Never knew that, or complications of the flu. Millions get it. Hundreds of thousands are hospitalized every year. As I started learning about that, two things came to mind. One is that it put all of this in perspective. And number two, it let me know maybe we should think about the people that suffer with this every year, making sure we're caring for each other, making sure we're more careful of this stuff. That also says this, though. The facts do tell us we want to be careful today. We don't want to ignore this completely, but here's what I want to do. I also don't want to do more than we're being asked to do. So we're asking, if you're comfortable just staying in your car, feel free to do that. If you don't want to talk to somebody, if you want to leave your windows up, there's no problem with that at all. We have been told to try to just limit groups to 10 or less. So we're saying if you want to gather up and be in a group of 10 or less, stay away from other big groups, you're free to do that. Following service today, we have a papusa truck here. It is a Honduran specialty. And we thought that since we support missions in Honduras, it would be kind of a good theme to have Honduras food here today. And so during this time, give them till about, I don't know, they probably need till about 11:15 or so. If you want to go over and make orders, once again, stay in groups of less than 10, but feel free to go over and make orders. The bathrooms are open inside. Once again, we want to make sure that faith and facts are triumphing over fear. I also want to encourage you, limit your media intake right now. Stay off social media as much as you can. Don't assume a headline is telling you the truth. Read and research stuff for yourself. Look at the facts. For example, how many of you heard the UK scientists have said 500,000 people were going to die through this, has now reduced that to 20,000. Honk your horn if you heard that. Yeah. Don't assume just because somebody wears a white coat that they always know what they're doing, all right? They make mistakes just like we do. And so make sure you're just getting good facts, remaining calm, and looking this stuff over. Otherwise, we are glad to have you today. We are going to spend some time in worship. We're going to talk about Jesus this morning. We are going to have some food available for you afterwards. We will take communion together. So it's good to have you here. It's good to have you online if you're watching this online. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Nate for some worship.
Good morning, everyone. So go ahead and pull out your phones and open up the church app. If you do not have it, you can find the app in the Apple Store or in the App Store or in Google Play. Search for Core Christian Community. Make sure the logo for the app has that entire name on it. Okay, I know there's been some confusion. Some of our older apps are actually still available, and we still have them on your phone. But the information for today is in our church app. So if you go ahead and open that up, we're going to go to the songs again. When you open it up, go to Meridian Point Church, and then tap on Sunday. When you tap on Sunday, you'll see sermon notes. You can follow along with today's message and fill in the blanks there. The other thing is go to worship right there next to it, and then you'll see the 3 songs that we're doing. Good Grace, From Whom All Blessings Flow, and Another in the Fire. So the first song we're going to do this morning is the song that I introduced last week called Good Grace. People come together, strange as neighbors. Our blood is one. Children of generations of every salvation, the kingdom come. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Whoa, 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 whoa. Say that again. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So Jesus, our redemption. Jesus, our redemption. Our salvation is in His blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, His kingdom come. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Come on. Whoa, 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 whoa. Say it again. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the waters come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, pure grace come down. His name is Jesus. Come on, swing wide, swing wide. All you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Jesus, our redemption. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in His blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, His kingdom come. Amen. All right, so go back out to that menu, and the next song that we're doing is From Whom All Blessings Flow. What gift of love could I offer to a king? What weight or worth could be held within my offer? He alone is worthy. Of a glorious song is inscribed upon my heart. This treasure held in an alabaster jar, I bring to bring him all the glory. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. What sacrifice could be equal to his own? The cross of Christ has declared that there is none I owe. Yet I know I owe him all. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Our Father God, the infinite, the matchless King, magnificent, the living Christ, the servant Son, the prophesied, the saving one, the Holy Ghost, gift from above, the faithful friend, the seal of love, this life, this heart, this song to him, my all in all, my everything, praise God from you, blessings flow, praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above the heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Praise God from whom blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above the heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. All right, the next song we're going to do is Another in Fire. There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next There was another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there's a cross that bears the burden where another died for me. There is another in the fire. All my dead effort didn't need the water. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning, either way I won't bow to the things of this world. 'Cause I know I'll never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding, well, power set me free. There is a grave that holds nobody. Now that power lives in me. There is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. I can see the light in the darkness, and the darkness starts to heal. I can hear the roar in the heavens, and the space between where's them. I can feel the ground shaking beneath us as the prison walls fade in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it. So come with me in the space between all the things I see and this reckoning. I know I'll never be alone. We got today. I know I'll never be alone. Be another in the fire, standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding, how could you have been to me? Count joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I can see the light in the darkness, as the darkness starts to heal. I can hear the roar in the heavens, as the space between where's still. I can feel the ground shaking beneath us as the prison walls fade in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between. Be another in the fire, stay next to me. Be another in the waters, holding back the sea. Should I ever need reminding, you've been to me. Count the joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Count the joy from every battle, 'Cause I know that's where you lead. What kind of joy can every battle? 'Cause I know that's where you lead. What kind of joy can every battle? 'Cause I know that's where you lead. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Father, that you are always with us. That we can always rely on you being with us, God. That's a promise that never fails. So, Lord, we look to you. We trust you. Teach us today. In Jesus' name, amen. You can be seated. I don't know if that still applies anymore or not. I don't think so. Once again, I want to thank Nate for putting all the worship together, getting all our sound stuff done, our sound people doing all that. It is a big job to switch over so quickly to doing something new. Appreciate them doing that. Been talking about the various phrases that we have kind of adopted coming out of this. By the way, it looks like my paper blew away somewhere. Is it down there anywhere? Let's see it. Okay. So I'm going to look out. Monica, if you can find a paper down there somewhere, that'd be great. I don't need it right now, but I'll need it later. We've been talking about some of the phrases that we have that have come out of all this. And so one of those is facts, faith and facts over fear. Another one of those that's come up is the idea of wash your hands and talk about Jesus. We've been saying that from the beginning, that we want to be safe, we want to be smart about this stuff, but that we've also got a lot of opportunities right now. There will be a lot of people asking questions. There will be a lot of chances to share your faith with others. If we have the faith that carries us through stuff like this, there are people who are going to ask us why we are handling differently than what most of the world is doing. And so we need to be prepared to be able to answer those questions, to be able to talk about Jesus during these times. And so we're going to put our current Ephesians series on hold until this is over, and we're going to spend the next several weeks just talking about Jesus. And there's going to be two reasons we're going to do that. If you're here this morning and you're just curious, what is faith like during this time? What does it mean to be a believer? Thank you, Paul. To be a believer in Jesus. What does it mean to have faith during these times? We want to be able to explain to you who Jesus is and what he's all about and why he brings hope even in the most troubling times. If you are already a Christian, if you're already somebody who believes in Jesus, then we want to be able to help you and equip you to share that faith with your friends, to be able to talk to them about him and do it effectively, because you're going to have opportunities during this time to do it. So today we're going to start with this topic. We're going to start in the very basics. The Bible says that the first step to coming to faith in Jesus is simply believing in him, that he is who he says he is, that he is who he's claimed to be. And so this morning we're going to start with a simple question, and it's where it all starts. How do you even know Jesus is real? How do we even know he really lived? It's important whether you have just chosen to believe Jesus or that you've been convinced that he is true. God does not want us to have blind faith, and especially in times like this. If you simply think Jesus is true, but you haven't been convinced of it, then your faith could be rocked when we face hard times. How many of you honk your horn if you've ever been bungee jumping? Anybody been bungee jumping? All right, I've been bungee jumping. And here's what I wanted to know. I didn't care what the guy told me that the bungee cord was the right length and worked. I wanted to see it first. I'm not going to jump off here without seeing and knowing that that bungee cord was the right length, could hold my weight, could do all that stuff. I don't want to do that. I want to be convinced that it's going to hold my weight. Here's the thing. Faith is placed in something. It doesn't just exist on its own. God does not expect us to have blind faith. Faith is placed in something. It doesn't stand on its own. And so my faith is not just in a nebulous, I'm just kind of wishful thinking. When I'm bungee jumping, I want to know, can I put my faith in that cord? Is it worthy of my faith? So when it comes to Jesus, we need to ask, is he worthy of our faith? Is there enough evidence about him and his claims to place our faith in him? And God wants to prove himself to us. He wants us to be convinced that he is faith worthy. Take a look at Romans chapter 1, verses 19 through 20. Romans 1, 19 through 20. When you get there, honk your horns. I love horn honking because it lets me know that you guys are awake.
So, all right, 3 of you are awake. That's good. Romans 1, 19 through 20. When you find it, go ahead and honk your horn. So God wants us to be convinced. Here's what it says in Romans 1, 19 through 20. They know the truth about God because he's made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. See, God says, I've left evidence for you so that you will place your trust in me. That you will know that I am trustworthy. That you can put your faith in me. I'm not asking you to just have blind faith. So, some have claimed that Jesus is simply a mythical character. He's not a historical person. Others claim that stories about a number of Jewish teachers of the time were kind of all consolidated, and then they just put it into this fictional character named Jesus, and it was just a bunch of good teachings. Still others believe that the myths and legends associated with Egypt and Persia and India at the time, that those were just rewritten into a Jewish context, and if they created this person of Jesus in the first century, who may or may not have existed at all. Here's what Bertrand Russell, a famous atheist who wrote a book, Why I Am Not a Christian, here's what he said. He wrote this: historically, it's quite doubtful whether Christ ever existed at all. And if he did, we do not know anything about him. First of all, let me just say, baloney. That is a guy who's either ignorant or is lying to you. Remember facts over fear? That one might be one you want to check into. See, but here's the thing. If we don't know the evidence for believing that Jesus was a real historical figure, we can be intimidated by those who claim things like that and say he wasn't. And we can be unnecessarily hindered in our attempt to remove obstacles in someone else's path to faith. If they ask you these questions, if they say they have heard something like that written, can you answer their questions? Can you answer their fear with facts? So, let's start here. What constitutes evidence for Jesus? Well, you don't verify historical events and people through the scientific method. We can't tell if Abraham Lincoln existed by pulling up Abraham Lincoln, testing him, observing him, and then repeating him. That's not how it works. The scientific method doesn't work for proving historical characters and events. Historical veracity comes from a preponderance of evidence, not a repeatable and observable process. And so the truth is this: the evidence of historical writings, along with the evidence of the beginning and the spread of Christianity, is best explained by the existence of an extraordinary historical figure named Jesus. And if we accept the existence of Julius Caesar and Constantine and Alexander the Great, if we apply the same historical study and rules we use to verify their existence, if we do the same thing to verify the existence of Jesus, we will absolutely conclude Jesus is a real person who really lived. And if we deny that he existed, then to be consistent, you also have to deny the existence of Julius Caesar and Constantine and Alexander the Great. None of them can be proven to exist. In reality, virtually no recognized scholars in this subject suggest Jesus did not exist. And it's just not a logical conclusion from the evidence. There will always be people who, against all the evidence, will continue to claim that Jesus never existed. But there are also still people that claim that Elvis is still alive. All right? But there's no evidence for that. The fact remains the vast amount of evidence is against those who claim Jesus never existed. So, what do we know about Jesus that we can learn outside the Bible? Do we have any evidence outside the Bible that Jesus existed? Now, some people say to me, well, why don't you just use the Bible? And the Bible is all you need. It tells you everything you need to know about Jesus. Well, I believe the Bible is a trustworthy historical document. I think they're some of the most trustworthy historical documents we've ever had. But many people will write the Bible off right away as, well, of course the Bible's going to say Jesus is real. It was written by Christians. You can't use it. And so although it is vital at some point to be able to show why you're convinced the Bible is true and accurate, you don't have to use it to verify the existence of Jesus. The evidence from secular writers, so from writers outside the Bible, the evidence of those who wrote around the time of Jesus is pretty sparse. We don't have a lot of outside the Bible evidence and historical writings, but we do have quite a bit. As a matter of fact, we have a lot more about Jesus in outside writings than we do many other people of that time. And the truth is, that should be expected that we don't find many outside writings. Because during Jesus' lifetime, he was not a prominent figure outside that small area of Judea where he only preached for 3 years. You wouldn't expect to find somebody that obscure to have a lot of writings about him during that time. The average person outside of Judea and Galilee and the wider Roman Empire would not have known Jesus lived while Jesus was alive. I would think if we found a ton of writings from all over the Roman Empire from the time of Jesus during his 3-year ministry, our forgery detectors would go off. The critics would be saying, wow, that's obviously not true. Why would there be a lot of widespread writings about a guy who only preached for 3 years in this little area? But having said that, there are several key and convincing sources outside of biblical writings that prove to us Jesus really existed. And we even get a lot of details about him. Some very early non-Christian writers mention him. There are 3 very specific ones that we have stuff from. The first is a guy named Cornelius Tacitus. Cornelius was a Roman historian. He was writing around 115 AD. So you're talking about 70 to 85 years after Jesus' death. We have some of his writings in which he speaks about the fire that broke out and destroyed a lot of Rome in 64 AD. It was during the reign of Nero. And here's what he writes in his history as a Roman historian about that fire. He said this, quote, "To dispel the rumor, Nero substituted as culprits and treated with the most extreme punishments some people popularly known as Christians, whose disgraceful activities were notorious. The originator of the name, Christ, had been executed when Tiberius was emperor by order of the procurator Pontius Pilate. But the deadly cult, though checked for a time, is now breaking out again, not only in Judea, the birthplace of this evil, but even throughout Rome, where all nasty and disgusting ideas from all over the world pour in and find a ready following." Does that sound like a guy who is pro-Christian to you? Probably not. But he verifies a number of historical events mentioned in the Bible. He mentions where Jesus lived, that he was from Judea, that during the reign of Tiberius was when Jesus was around, that he was executed by Pontius Pilate, that he had a large following, and the dates all match up to what the Bible says. This guy, Tacitus, is not a likely candidate to be basing his writings on biblical writings. He would have been using Roman records and Roman history. Also, for a long time, the Bible was the only place we found the name Pontius Pilate. And a lot of historians for the longest time said, that's because he didn't exist. They made it up. Well, in Tacitus' writings, it's one of the first times we see Pontius Pilate mentioned outside the Bible. And now that we've done even more archaeological discoveries, we find the name Pontius Pilate in a lot of historical documents. The Bible had it right before anyone else even knew they were right. We have another historian. His name is Pliny the Younger. He was a Roman governor, and he was a historian in northern Italy around 112 AD, around the same time as Tacitus. He wrote a letter about how he was having a difficult time in his territory governing because of the Christians who were there. Pagan temples were closing down. Festivals to the gods were no longer being attended. There were no sales of sacrificial animals at the temples. The Christians were hurting the economy. And so he executed some of them who were openly Christian. But he was now having a problem with his conscience because he admitted that Christians weren't doing anything that was harmful. They had simply quit supporting the existing religions. And he wrote this. He wrote, quote, "Their lives were exemplary, without fraud, adultery, theft, or dishonesty." Now, he does not mention Jesus directly in his writings, but he does back up the impact of Christianity very early on, and that the practice of their beliefs, not just the teaching, were literally affecting the economies of the world because of how Christians were behaving. And the behavior he mentions matches up to the teachings of Jesus. There's one other historian that's very important. His name was Josephus. He was a Jewish Roman historian, only about 70 AD. So he's only about 40 years after Jesus' death. He sets out to write a history of the Jewish people of the time. He was not a Christian. He was not a believer that Jesus was the Son of God. But in his writings, he mentions Herod the Great. He mentions Caiaphas the high priest who lived during the time of Jesus. He mentions John the Baptist. He mentions James, who he calls the brother of Jesus, the so-called Christ. He writes the most extensive description of Jesus we have outside the Bible. Here's what he wrote, quote, "About this time arose Jesus, a wise man. He drew to himself many, and when Pilate, on the indictment of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those who had loved him at first did not cease to do so, and even to this day, the race of Christians who were named for him has not died out." He mentions details about Jesus and his life and his crucifixion. Now, we have plenty of other sources like this. One is from Rome, one of my favorites, from Rome in AD 52. And in AD 52, they're writing about a darkness that came over back around the time of Jesus that seemed to cover the entire empire. And it was said that it just was a coincidental eclipse of the sun that no one anticipated. But it shows that that event, this weird eclipse of the sun, was widely enough known, and it was widely enough tied to Jesus' death that people had to explain it in a different way. Some rabbis of the day alluded to the birth of Jesus, which they wrote was, quote, different. Well, there's an understatement. And they mentioned his miracles, and they said, quote, "He practiced magic and led Israel astray." These are not supporters of Jesus, but they talk about his miracles. They talk of his disciples. They write about Matthew by name. They write about the crucifixion. They write that Jesus claimed to be God. They write that he promised to return from the dead. These are all non-Christians writing about what Jesus taught. By any historical reliability standards, there is more than a preponderance of evidence, even without the Bible, to state there was a historical man named Jesus who fits the Bible accounts. It is not within doubt. We also have things from archaeology. Turn to Luke chapter 2, 1 through 5. When you get there, honk your horn, tell me you're still awake, show me you found it. Luke chapter 2, 1 through 5. Here we go, Luke chapter 2, 1 through 5. At that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken from Quirinius, who was governor of Syria. All returned to their own ancestral towns to register for this census. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee, and he took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting a child. That's one of the most famous biblical verses we have, and we can trace it in history through archaeology. We have inscriptions from all over the Roman Empire at this time talking about the order to take the census. One of the most, we find lots of evidence also about crucifixions from the time as the method of execution that ties to how Jesus died. One of the most interesting and one of the things I find most compelling is in 1878, we found a marble slab. It was 15 by 24 feet in size. It was found in the city of Nazareth. Jesus' hometown. And it described an ordinance of Caesar calling for the death penalty for anyone who steals from a tomb. Now, you might go, well, what's the big deal about that? Why does that mean anything? Well, they believe it comes from sometime between 14 and 54 AD. Jesus' life and death is right in the middle of that. It is out of the ordinary because grave robbery was very common throughout the empire. And usually it was just considered a minor offense. It wasn't considered a big deal. But then, in the middle of Jesus' hometown, we find anyone who robs a grave as a big, big offense. People have speculated that that was the government reaction to the resurrection of Jesus. They weren't going to have that happen again. And so in Nazareth, it was very serious crime to rob from a grave. We have houses found in the destruction of Pompeii by Mount Vesuvius that have Christian symbols written on walls from 79 AD, pointing to where the house churches were meeting at the time. In 1945, they found an unrobbed tomb outside of Jerusalem with coins dating to about 50 AD, and there were 5 caskets in them. On the caskets were things written like, Jesus help us, Jesus let them arise, crosses marked on all of them. That was within 20 years of the crucifixion of Jesus. How quickly it was spreading. All that is pretty impressive evidence of a sudden and large movement following a Jewish rabbi who only taught for 3 years. It exploded on the scene. We combine the archaeological evidence with the written references, and knowing how much there must have been written to have any writings still survive, and we can safely assume there was widespread acknowledgement of Jesus and his followers during his time. There is very little room to interpret the evidence in any other way than the fact of the historical Jesus. He was real. What he said is true. What happened is history. So, the big question was this: does being convinced Jesus lived change anything? Does it change anything? Turn to Acts chapter 17, verses 10 through 12. Honk your horns when you find it. It's the kids' favorite part, isn't it? Are they all fighting over who gets to honk the horns? Honk your horn if your kids are fighting over who gets to honk the horn. Yeah, there you go. Acts chapter 17, verses 10 through 12. We read this. That very night, the believers sent Paul and Silas to Berea. When they arrived there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. And the people of Berea were more open-minded than those in Thessalonica. And they listened eagerly to Paul's message. They searched the scriptures day after day to see if Paul and Silas were teaching the truth. As a result, many Jews believed, as did many of the prominent Greek women and men. See, you are more likely to have confidence in your beliefs, in your faith, if you've studied and questioned them first. There is nothing wrong with doubt if it pushes you to search for answers. If we're not learning anything else through this time, that should be a big lesson. See, God gives evidence to those willing to honestly search. He is not trying to be secret about this stuff. And the Bible says open-minded people check things out. They don't just accept someone's word for something. We need to make sure we verify what we have been taught and what we believe. Blind faith is not biblical. Take a look at 1 Peter 3:15. Honk when you get there. First, there's no way. We just honked immediately. 1 Peter 3:15. Honk when you get there. We're told this in 1 Peter 3:15. Instead, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. If you are not confident this morning that you could give a convincing answer, if someone comes up to you during this time and says, Why do you believe in Jesus? I heard he wasn't even real. Well, why do you react differently during this time than everybody else does? How come you're not freaking out? How come you have peace during times like this? If you can't answer their questions, it's time to start preparing. I know a lot of you prepared for times like this. You have water at home, you've got toilet paper at home, you've got dog food at home. We prep and we prep and we prep and we prepare for times like this. Have you done the same thing on a spiritual level? Have you prepped spiritually for a time like this? Are you able to tell people about Jesus when they ask? Do you know why you believe what you believe? Are you prepared to give an answer? Because gaining confidence in what we believe is ultimately about helping others discover Jesus on their own, helping them to place their faith in him. If we truly have set aside Christ in our hearts, if we truly have been convinced of who Jesus was and what he taught is true, we will share it with others, and we can do it effectively. Wash your hands, talk about Jesus. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you that you have been so gracious in providing us evidence that you are exactly who you say you are. That you have provided evidence for your life, your death, your resurrection. That we are not called upon to have blind faith. That we are called upon to be open-minded. That to examine the evidence. To make sure what we are being taught is true. And as we do that, we find that our faith in you is well placed. That we would be willing to do anything for you. That we will trust you with our very lives. That when you say our needs will be met, we can take that to the bank. We know that you will watch over us. That although we will have troubles in this world, that you have overcome it all. Lord, I pray that during this time, you will give us so many opportunities to share who you are with others. That we will be prepared to do it. That we won't just be thinking about caring for our physical needs, but that we will be preparing to meet our spiritual needs and spiritual needs of others. We thank you for this beautiful morning. We thank you for this beautiful parking lot. We thank you for the vehicles we have to still get out and travel about and be together. We just pray that you will give our leaders wisdom during this time, that you will be with us, and that you will help us to simply wash our hands and talk about Jesus. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. A couple of things we're going to do during this time. We've got some announcements we're going to make. If you'd like to make an order from the food truck over there, once again, keep the groups to 10 or less, please. All right, we don't want to disrupt that. But you can go over and make your orders. Also, we're going to have communion in a few minutes. And so if you want to send somebody up from your vehicle to grab communion for your group, they've got gloves on up here, and they will prepare that for you. And you can take that back. We'll take communion together. And so at this time, Monica's going to bring us some announcements.
Good morning, church. It is good to see all of you out here this morning. So I'm excited. I don't know, can you guys smell the food that's coming or being prepared from the truck? Oh, my word, it smells good. So we really do encourage you guys. We want to have you guys have a place where you guys can eat, but also, like Barry said at the beginning of service, trying to support those locally in our area. And so by buying food there, we're supporting them and allowing them also to care for their families. So a couple of things I wanted to let you know. First of all, if you have been watching on Facebook or have been getting our notifications, we are currently doing our Connect groups online right now through Zoom. And so you will see that we have several things going on throughout the week. And so I don't know if Barry mentioned, I didn't catch that, about our shepherds are doing a devotion every night at 8 o'clock. And so you can go on and listen to that Devo. That's open to anyone. So if you know someone who just needs a word, have them go and connect that way. We will have, starting this week, we're having our very own Hannah Taylor is going to be leading a crafting group online. And so if you want a Bible journal, or if you want to crochet or knit, or just be in a place where other women, maybe men, I don't know, but anyway, are there and they are just connecting, that'll be a way that you can do that as well. We also have Nate Brewster is leading one of our family groups right now, and so it is not filled up, and so we are still having people go. If you want to go online and register, you go into our app and you'll see Connect Online, and you go there, there's a registration form, and that registration form will help you get information to me so that I know that that's something that you want to do. We also have Kelly, who does our women's ministry. If you are not on her email list, she is doing a Zoom Bible study, and so I don't think the time and the date have actually been picked, but if you go online and register for that under the women's group, that will let her know how many are interested in being involved in that women's group as well. Last but not least, our children's. Anastasia is preparing a video each week for our kiddos, and so you are able to go to our Meridian Point YouTube page, and that's where she has, it will be uploaded, and your kids can watch a small Devo lesson that she has prepared for them as well. So we have stuff going on for the entire family. Also, the Equip Group classes that would have been starting up here soon have already started. And so you can also go and onto that registration form and fill out if you are interested in a Equip class. Right now, those are happening at different times throughout the week, and those are being hosted or led by different people, and so you're also able to see those as well. If you are not connected via the internet, Facebook or email or stuff like that, let us know before you leave today. We want to make sure that you are connected. If you have a need right now that isn't being met or hasn't been met, we want to be able to help with that as well. And so you can grab, there's several of our staff kind of roaming around. So Barry and me, I see Fox over here. And so just wave one of us down, and we would love to come and find out if you need specific prayers right now and you just need somebody to pray with you. I will be over here to the side by the children's building right here, and I would love to pray for you as well. So right now it's important for us to be the church family and to help one another. And so if you need that, let us know. Thank you.
Also want to let our teenagers know we have youth groups going on tonight online. We'll be doing it differently. They can get on Facebook and figure that out. All right, so post on Facebook. So once you guys get on there, another phrase as we are preparing for our communion offering time here. Another phrase we've had is day by day, make it through April. That seems to be kind of where we're aiming at. And some of the things we want to do is we want to be able to help those in our community who are going to struggle financially, to help them make it through April and to make it through day by day. We also want to be able to make sure when this is all over that our church is still healthy. We want to be able to provide for our staff and our missions, for our building and all that stuff. One of the things that we don't want to do is we don't want to have to take on any debt during this time to make it through there. And so I'm just going to read to you what the early Christians did when they were having hard times like this. And we'll leave it at that. But you can give online. We've got some trays up here if you would like to give in person. But here's what Paul was telling the church during the hard times. Now I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, what God in his kindness has done through the churches in Macedonia. They are being tested by many troubles, and they are very poor. But they are also filled with abundant joy, which is overflowed in rich generosity. For I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more. And they did it of their own free will. They begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. They even did more than we had hoped. For their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. So we have urged Titus, who encouraged your giving in the first place, to return to you and encourage you to finish this ministry of giving. Since you excel in so many ways, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love for us, I want you to excel also in the gracious act of giving. I am not commanding you to do this, But I am testing how genuine your love is by comparing it with the eagerness of the other churches. You know the generous grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty he could make you rich. Here's my advice. It would be good for you to finish what you started a year ago. Last year, you were the first who wanted to give, and you were the first to begin doing it. Now, you should finish what you started. Let the eagerness you showed in the beginning be matched now by your giving. Give in proportion to what you have. Whatever you give is acceptable if you give it eagerly. And give according to what you have, not what you don't have. Of course, I don't mean your giving should make life easy for others and hard for yourselves. I only mean that there should be some equality. Right now, you have plenty and can help those who are in need. Later, they will have plenty and can share with you when you need it. In this way, things will be equal. As the scriptures say, those who gathered a lot had nothing left over, and those who gathered only a little had enough. I just want to encourage you to be generous during this time. If you've got your communion now, this is from the night that Jesus was betrayed. It says, Jesus said, I've been very eager to eat this Passover meal with you before my suffering begins. For I tell you now that I won't eat this meal again until its meaning is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. And he took a cup of wine and gave thanks to God for it. And then he said, take this and share it among yourselves. For I will not drink wine again until the kingdom of God is come. He took some bread and gave thanks to God for it. Then he broke it in pieces and gave it to the disciples, saying, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. After supper, he took another cup of wine and said, this cup is the new covenant between God and his people, an agreement confirmed with my blood, which is poured out as a sacrifice for you. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you. Our ultimate hope that lies in the covenant that you made with us, sealed in your blood. That we know that we have been forgiven. That we know that we have been made part of your family. That we know that we can be right with God. That this communion reminds us of all that you've done for us and all that you have promised. We long for the day when we will get to celebrate communion with you in heaven, face to face. We pray. Until then, you continue to be with us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thank you for coming out this morning. We will be doing this every Sunday, no matter what, until this is over. So be sure to come out and join us. If we get too many cars, we'll add a service. Want to encourage you, stick around for lunch. Stay in groups of less than 10. Please do that. We do not want to cause any problems anywhere. So make sure you're doing that. Take your time getting out there. And then we will see you online during the week, and we will see you back here Sunday. Thank you.
One last announcement. So as you guys are leaving, you'll notice that we have some kids, we have some people dropping trash off. If you would please make sure to follow the red hat guys. They are instructing us. Please exit out of this exit over here when you leave. But because of the food truck, we're going to have people crossing over. So please make sure that we're taking extra care to watch for people that are crossing. So again, we're going to exit out over here, and that's it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
We're also doing a food drive for Crossfire Ministry today. If you brought food, you can leave it on the picnic table, and we'll be delivering that this week.
There we go.